He was a stimulating conversationalist on a wide-ranging list of topics of which he had very set opinions. And that was John. So he was a friend to all of us. To some of us, he was a brother, and with a special bond that comes from growing up together. And to some of us, he was a father who provided nurture and guidance and support and some discipline, all wrapped in an envelope of love. And to one of us, he was the very best friend, husband, and soulmate. I really didn't notice John for a while. We both went to the same high school. It's a population well over 2,000. And John was in grade 9, and I was a few years ahead. We were about the same age. And Anne was in grade 9 as well. And I noticed John was hanging around my sister a bit. That's when I first started paying attention. I also noticed that John had a lot of friends, nice guys, that seemed to enjoy each other's company. And I think that carried through his whole life. But that year, The King and I was a smash hit movie that was just released.
Yeah.
And little noticed John came to school with a Yul Brynner haircut. He was certainly noticed by all students and staff at Westdale Collegiate in Hamilton. I was impressed, maybe not 100% positively impressed, but much more impressed than our authoritative belief in harsh discipline principal, Colonel McQueen, who was as bald as a billiard ball, and I don't think had seen the movie, and misinterpreted John as directing a message at him that wasn't entirely conforming with the student-principal relationship. But somehow John managed to, it was, everybody knew that John was in deep trouble. But out of it all, he managed to negotiate a situation where he didn't miss a day of school. He didn't have to wear a hat. And I'm not sure that it was because he was able to convince Colonel McQueen of the merits of emulating Yul Brynner, but more that his father happened to be director of education. Over time, I've often thought back to that incident and kind of thought how ironic it was as John developed a total lack of need of shampoo. John happened to graduate from Westdale as a valedictorian, so I'm sure his relationship with Colonel McQueen was much better than the last I saw of it.
Right.
So, I'd like now to call upon David. David Block, graduate, was a classmate and roommate of John in medical school, but also embarked on their medical career together as partners. So, and have been best friends all their life. David?
Thank you.
So, shock to us all, but I just want to tell you a few little things about John. My first meeting with John, I was at Queen's Medical School in Kingston, Ontario, and John had just graduated from Harvard, and we were in first year medical school together. So I'm sitting at the back of the room with a couple of friends, and this fellow arrived at the front door with a Harvard-type jacket on and tie, and a briefcase and a big smile. And I said to my friend, Frank Tyndall, I said, "There's a new classmate." And he chuckled. And anyway, this fellow from Harvard kept coming and coming and sat right down beside us. And so that very day, we went out for beers together, and John became a charter member of the Friday Afternoon Sipping Society. And you didn't join the Sipping Society unless John approved of you. And much to the chagrin of girlfriends and wives at home Friday evening, that Sipping Society carried on for 4 years, and John was a big part of it. It was a lot of fun. So John and I became friends. I met Anne, kind of met her sister for a date, who's now my wife. But John moved in, lived with another buddy of mine. We had some wonderful times together. And then Anne and John got married the next year. So that would be our 3rd year medical school. And Anne then had a husband and also 2 extra roommates, because we were at the Prices all the time. It was fantastic, and we had wonderful times together. So John did very well at medical school, graduated, and he's the honorary president of our class, and our class knows everything that's happened here, and everyone, of course, is quite upset and shocked by all this. But at that point, he and Anne went to New Westminster. At this point, Geordie was a baby, having been born in his final year of medical school, and they moved to. He interned at the Royal Columbian in New Westminster, and he phoned me one time in the winter. I was training in Toronto, and he said, "We're starting a new program." I was in the surgical program, and we formed, he was a charter member of the first emergency specialty program in Canada, actually. There was an offshoot of it happening at the Hamilton Hospital, but we worked that for the first year, and John was a real integral part of that, establishing that program, which is a great program now. After that, you probably know all this, but he moved to Guelph into family practice, where he had a lot of great friends, then off to Atlanta, the same thing, and then to Malta, and down here the last, I think, 13 or 14 years that he loved so much. But just being able to be a friend and a partner of this guy, you knew that he was always reliable, he was always a lot of fun, kind of guy you'd love to go down the river with in any kind of expedition, and just a wonderful guy. We're going to miss him dearly, and I just hope that that you people had as much kind of positive experiences that I did with him, and our family loved him so much. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I, without my notes, didn't realize that I was supposed to ask Joan first.
That's all right. I disappeared into the crowd. No,
That's hard for you to do.
Mine's just very, very quick story about how blind John was. John loved Anne so much, and his children, but there was a time we were at Skeleton Lake, the Price family cottage, and we were sitting around, and John said, "It's so nice to have sisters-in-law. I really appreciate it. We love you too, John. And what is it you find so special about us?" And he said, "Well, Anne, of course, is the most feminine. Susan is the most beautiful, but not as beautiful as Anne. And Heather is the smartest, but not as smart as Anne. And Joan is the most naive." No. So spectacular. Anyway, John was such a wonderful part of our family. We loved him so much. We're going to miss him. And that's all I have to say.
By the way, this is a storytelling session that will include you. And so, but we're going to go through the family first. What we'd like if those who wish to could come forward and give a story about John. Now, in order to kind of know who you are, if you want to do that, could you sort of come over in this direction, and we'll know how many there are, and go from there. I want to know how much filling I have to do.
A lot of fresh air right here.
So the next on our list is John's older brother, Peter Price, Dr. Peter Price.
I've been introducing myself around here as John's big brother. But obviously I'm not as big as he was. And yeah, he was a good guy. And he was big, a lot bigger than I am, but big in more than just stature. He had character and all sorts of good things. And you know most of them. But he didn't start with that when he was a kid. Okay? You guys have been talking about him as an adult. And you know him as an adult. I knew him from the time he was born. I'm 3.5 years older than he. And our family, I've got another brother, Gord. Anyway, three of us we were blessed with two marvelous parents, and they, by example, showed us how to become really good adults. Parents, whatever. One of the things they did, and it's already been mentioned by John, is in 1947, when I was 8 and John was 5, they bought a cottage in Muskoka, and just north of Toronto, on a little place called Skeleton Lake. And it was wilderness, it was remote. We had to go in 5 or 7 miles by boat, little 5-horsepower engine on a big 16. And it had no road, it had no power, it had no water. We had to carry it up from the lake. The lighting was kerosene lamps. The heating was a fireplace or a wood stove. And we learned an awful lot there. We were there as young kids, 2 months every year. The rest of the year it was inhabited by mice. And lots of them. They stayed around for the summer too. Anyway, I'd just like to give you, we learned so much there, all right? Learned how to chop wood, and build fires, and swim, sail even at one point, and mess around in boats, and learn a healthy respect for the water and what it can do when it's nasty. We never did own a life jacket the whole time. So a couple of things about that. Gordon, John, and I had a game we would play. We had a canoe and a 60-foot canoe, 16-foot runabout motorboat with a 5 or even a 10-horse later on motor on the back. And the game was 2 guys in the canoe, 1 guy in the boat, and the object was to sink the canoe with the wash of the boat. And so you come roaring up to it, and the guys in the canoe. And Mom and Dad sitting on the dock saying, "Oh, aren't the boys having fun?" Anyway, John was a very accomplished guy in many ways, and one of them, he surprised us all. In grade 9, he built a boat. He got the plan somewhere, and built this boat. It wasn't just an ordinary boat. This was a little speedboat, about 10, 11 feet long. Blunt brow, built of plywood and other pieces of wood, glued and screwed together. and you put that 10 horsepower motor on the back, and it would go like a bat out of hell. And I rode in it a few times, and it was scary. But he built this thing, painted it green and red, and he got it up to the cottage, and boy, he was proud of that thing, and rightly so. The other one, we finally, I guess the 10 horsepower motor was barely able to lift us out of the water for water skiing. We didn't go very fast. I got up on the thing one time and I wasn't very good at it, but anyway, we bouncing back and forth, trying to go across the wake. And just as John was turning left, I foolishly went out to the right. And John noticed that and started to turn sharper and sharper and sharper. And I kept going faster and faster along this circle. And, you know, hanging on for dear life. And he was laughing away. And eventually I fell off. And I can still remember his laughing face as he hauled me into the boat or helped me. Ralph's mentioned his emulation of Colonel McLean, the principal. Gordon and I did that. John had made some bets in his class that he wouldn't do that. And so one night, my parents were out, and we got John sitting down in the kitchen, and a pair of shears, and then Dad's razor, and we made him bald. Yeah, I was in first or second year university, I guess, by that point, but still living at home. And my parents were not amused. They were really ticked off. But John made, I don't know, 50, 60 bucks. Didn't give any to me. Anyway, okay, I'm going to finish off with a little story. Ann and the kids dropped in on us. We moved up to Calgary in 1969. We moved into our first house in July 1st, 1970. And John had just finished his year with Dave at this Emerge Medicine thing, but had decided he didn't like the rain in Vancouver, so he was moving back to Guelph. So they dropped in on us in Calgary about 3 or 4 days after we moved into our house, and we had a great visit. Hadn't seen him in a couple or 3 years, and we got to know the kids a little bit. But John had just had a hair transplant. And the dermatologist had taken little tufts of little bolts of skin to the back of his neck and stuck them on his forehead. And he must have had a sense of humor because he made them into a triangle. And by the time I saw him, they'd gone all curly. And so I commented on it and said, how are they doing? And he said, well, not too bad, but Pete, you know, it's really pubic hair. Every time I see a pretty girl, I got this urge to Ralph mentioned a few other things about John when he was in high school, that he was valedictorian of his class. But before that, all right, he played football, he rowed, he built that boat. What else? He played he played hockey, and that's how he got down to Harvard, actually. Top marks. He was graduated summa cum laude in his class, and I mean, in addition to all the other things he was doing, he studied hard and worked hard and was smart enough to get really good marks. Now, one last little thing. Back to our visit with him at our new house in Calgary. As he was leaving, he rolled down the window. He said, "Pete," he said, "remember, for my office, first day, free champagne and pelvics for everybody."
Thank you, Peter. You can John developed in his formative years. And there's still some years to go before he got to Centrala. So at this point, we'd like to have Jordan. We'll go Jordan, Julie, Ralph. Where's Julie?
Uncle Gordy want it? Uncle Gordy also?
Pardon?
Uncle Gordy or no?
No. Unless Gordy wants to.
Pete, with his last remarks, they're stole all of my
So yeah, I've been thinking about things to say for the last week, and I just now forgot all of them. So this is kind of off the cuff. So I'm Dad's oldest kid, and so yeah, I want to actually talk about some things that I think exemplify his attitude about life and his love of people. Covering the years from 1985 to 1990, because I could talk about it all the last 4 to 6 years, but I'll just limit it to that. So I followed Dad's footsteps, and I went to Queen's University up in Ontario. And I remember Mom and Dad driving me up there from Atlanta to drop me off and celebrate. And on the way up, Dad, we stopped somewhere, and Dad bought 10 pounds of fireworks. So they dropped me off, with a lamp and clothes and 10 pounds of fireworks. So my first year at Queen's, I did pretty well as a student, and I had the highest number of disciplinary fines, I think, at the university, somebody told me. And I think Dad was proud of me on both counts. And later, when I graduated, Mom and Dad got me a trip to the Galapagos as a graduation present, which was really, on the condition that Dad went. And so it was just an amazing trip, and now I'm a biologist actually, and that kind of probably influenced me more than anything. And we had from what I understand, we had the largest bar tab on the boat. And Dad was really proud of that. And just his sense of adventure that I'm sure many of you know. We had a great time there, and then he didn't want to go home, and so we went to Quito and went to a travel agent and ended up just continuing south and went to Cusco and Machu Picchu and so we stayed in this hotel in Machu, for you guys who don't know, Machu Picchu is this old, city, from the time of the Incas back, up on top of the Andes. And we stayed up there overnight and had a few drinks and decided it'd be a really good idea to sneak into Machu Picchu after hours, like we'd be the only ones there. And so we had a few drinks, and I was talking to somebody, and then Dad disappeared, and I went looking for him, and I ended up finding him at the gate to the city, and I could just hear laughter and stuff, and he was with the guards, these two guys with, I guess, Kalashnikov rifles or whatever. Dad is just talking to these guys, and they're just having this great time, and I don't know if you're familiar with how well Dad, spoke Spanish. After living here for 14 years. But this is before that. So he didn't speak a word of Spanish. And these guys didn't speak a word of Spanish either. They spoke Quechua. And so it was several steps away, and they were just having this great time and having a conversation, and I'll probably totally offend somebody here, I'm sure, but they just discovered this kind of mutual disdain for the French. In a really nice, friendly way. We were just talking and just having this great time, and afterwards, I went down and I was just amazed that, I have enough trouble having conversations with people in English, and he just loved people, and then he came up and he's like, yeah, they get off work at midnight, and that ended up going to bed, and I ended up. But so my dad was in many, like I really tried to emulate him a lot. He was one of the few, or definitely the biggest, role model in my life. And now I'm a father myself, and I really try to live up to what the kind of guy that he was. And just as a biologist, half of who I am came from my dad. It's the same thing with my siblings, and I feel really privileged to be, to carry that on. I feel really, really lucky to be his son. You think I can? I'll stand up here with you.
Anne received a poem from one of the quilters,
Martha Reuter.
And this poem was distributed among the quilters, and I may have been distributed more widely, but it was a poem that really struck home, and William Wordsworth. And Julie would like to try and read it.
Try.
Julie's the rock of the family.
Big letters. What though the radiance which was once so bright be now forever taken from my sight? Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass and the glory of the flowers, we will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind. In the primal sympathy which having been must ever be, in the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering, in the faith that looks through death. I love my dad.
Now, I ask for your consideration, because the next one up is sort of a shy, backward type. John and Anne's son, Ralph, named after me, by
Yes.
the way.
I am named after the host. Dad always called me Ralph Delph. If you guys would call me that today. Really nice. But he just so lucky to have such a great dad and such someone who was as a great example of being, he's just so hardworking and so intelligent and at the same time so compassionate and caring and so funny. I mean, he always loved a good joke and if you were witty and funny and surprised him with something funny, he respected you quite a bit. And that which his personality, all those traits. I mean, being a family doctor was just perfect for him. I mean, just if you could have picked a career for him, that would have been number one. The fact that he had all of that. He was intelligent, he was hardworking, he was compassionate, he had fun. People just loved him. And he was our family doctor for our neighborhood. So a lot of my friends went to him. They didn't realize it for years, but whatever. But they, after a while realized, your dad's my doctor. And so girls would come up to me and they're like, Ralph, I've known you for so long, I had no idea that your dad's my doctor. And I was like, yeah, I know, I've seen the pictures. One of my best friends, Tom, who went as he got older, and I think it was his first job, he had to go to Dad to get his first adult physical. So he didn't call me afterwards, but he called our other friend Jay, and he goes, Jay, me and Ralph's dad have a whole new relationship together. One time another friend in high school came up, and he goes, man, I went to your dad yesterday, and he grabbed my balls, and he said, cough. And then he grabbed my balls again, and he said, cough. And then he grabbed my balls, and he looked at me, and man, he didn't say nothing. When I told Dad that, he was like, who was it? Who was it? He thought it was the funniest thing in the world, and it's just that if you can surprise him, make him laugh, I mean, he respected you. He loved it so much with that. But he definitely loved the finer foods in the world, and including hot dogs. We always had to get places early. If we go to the ball game, we got to get there early, get a ballpark dog. Go to the airport, we got to get there early, get an airport dog. There's roadside dogs. Museum dogs weren't actually existent, but we got there early, and Dad was hoping for it. Dad definitely enjoyed drinking. And some people in the world are angry drunks and depressed drunks, and Dad was a happy drinker. He definitely enjoyed telling stories, and he was an angry drinker if you interrupted his stories. Violence in those situations, but and it was a delicate situation because the train of thought may not be there for a while, so we didn't want to get off kilter with it. But his friend Jack in Guelph, it said if he was a Native American, his Indian name would have been Starter of Many Stories. Finisher of None. But he was a great man with a huge heart, with just a wonderful sense of humor. And he did so much in his life. I know it was a shock, and it was too early, but he lived just a great life. And he did so much. He did so much, went to Harvard, became a doctor, married his high school sweetheart, and spent 48 years of marriage with her. And he loved playing tennis, and he always said, I wanted to go quick, and, that all happened. So and I'm just so happy to see so many people here that respected him and loved him, and so, he's had a great time down here. So, anyway, thank you.
I noticed a dearth of people over here.
So now is the time to try and match Ralph. And we open the floor to stories about John. It's how many do we have here?
I have one because I'm the oldest.
No, you're not.
Oh, no, the oldest to know.
Oh, the oldest to know us.
Oh, yes.
Yes, because
Well, in 1999, Graham and I, we lived out in San Juan Costa in La Floresta, and we'd come out to this area and seen it, and we fell in love with the area. And so there was a sign for rent with Chapala Realty, and we went and rented this beautiful house on the golf course here at Lisa Del Lago. And about 6 months after the moving van came with all of our belongings, and we were established and happily living here, we realized that there was actually a for sale sign on that house, and as well as a for rent sign. And this most delightful couple had apparently come through the house, and Graham and I were back in the house when they came through for the second time. And we met John and Ann Price. And they had fallen in love with the area and fallen in love with the house. And John was very concerned because, well, are you sure they're going to move out? You know, and so this house went through the sale process, and they announced that they were actually really going to come and live here. And so Graham and I quickly found another area, because we had bought a house, but we were doing renovations. But over the first couple of years, we had the most delightful conversations and probably the most memorable time of our many years here. And I will tell you that he truly, truly loved his family.
Yeah.
And I remember all of his stories about all of you and his fun sense of humor and the way he spoke and talked about each and every one of you. John truly loved his family, and he truly loved his wife. And we love you.
Thank you, Sheila. Next? Oh, good, thank you.
Most of you know who I am. I'm Marvin Harptop. I live down here on number 3, and I've known John for a long time. He's just been just an outstanding, wonderful, wonderful friend. For many years, I've been involved in cosmology, and I got talking with John one time, and we started a cosmological study group where we would go from one house to the other, you know, when we'd have our meetings and things. And it was so wonderful and revealing. And I told Ann when I found out that John had passed away, he didn't ask me, you know, he didn't. And we dearly loved him, and such an intelligent, you just can't imagine how good of a friend he was. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marvin. John is one of the people that it's easy to talk about. There are lots of stories about John. And I know that they're percolating in your heads. And John, as John would say, hold that thought. And we'd love to hear from you. Is there another?
I'll go. But unfortunately, trying to run the iPad and videotape all this.
You want me to hold it?
Oh, happy to. Thank you. My name's Tony, and I've known Ann and John for quite a few years since I moved here. I sing with Ann, and John was Ann's biggest fan. Unfortunately, very often she sang at church. And you could see the clouds gather over St. Andrews when he snuck into the back to hear her sing a solo or a duet. But the most amazing time was the day he almost got religion. He swore, and we know he fished. He swore that in the back of the church there was a scorpion about that big that was stalking him to Jesus. Now, he never shared that with Father Winston. Father Winston would have been knocking on the door at one time or another. But that man could tell a story the likes of which you had never heard. And he was a total blessing. I mean, they opened their home to me when nobody else was around to share my 70th birthday. And for me, that was one of the most touching and wonderful experiences of my life. Thanks to both of them, and thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Tony. You know, I was going to read from emails, or extract from emails, some comments about John. Unfortunately, the emails are in my room.
Would you like me to get?
And I would continue talking to you. But just on the rest of the surprising thing about all this is how well it's going. There was some discussion about, was it wise to have an hour of drinking with John's friends before we invited them to listen and contribute to John's stories about John. But you've been a very good audience. Yeah.
We're all birds of a feather here.
John Steele was I think he went to U of T. He was a doctor that graduated about the same time as John and spent a year up in UVic with him as a summer activity, working. And John writes to Anne, or at least John Steele writes to Anne about John Price, saying that John Price was absolutely one of the greatest persons I've ever known. And this, I've always felt that when we saw each other, the conversation resumed as if the pause was only a few seconds, not the years that transpired. His wry sense of humor always hit the right chord. In the Globe and Mail, Toronto's, or at least Canada's national newspaper, there's an obituary of John today, published today. And I think copies were left on the table in the other room. From Shirley Mercer, we will miss John's sense of humor, his intellectual curiosity, his joy for life, his excellence as a gringo. I'm sure you all share that description of John. From Ted Desaulniers, I learned from John's caring and developed a deep felt concern for the comfort and feelings of others. From Momoko Price, Gordy's wife.
Oh, daughter.
It says Uncle Johnny here.
Yeah,
Uncle Johnny always brought out the best in everyone at every family get-together. It really seemed like laughter and warmth followed him wherever he went. From Winston Welty. He's talking about how it's difficult to even conceive of how much of a shock you are having to deal with, and the truth, of course, that none of us can do grief's hard work for you as much as we would like to relieve you of that burden.
You know what? Another thing he said was, you know, if I had my way, there would be no death. But unfortunately, I'm not the manager. I'm just the salesman.
That's Father Winston?
Yeah.
Great. From Phyllis Cox, Tom and I recall fondly John's sense of humor and his inquisitive nature. I think there's a common thread here. He loved discussions on a variety of topics, I stole that line, only to be followed by, hold that thought. Good times, with exclamation marks.
You know why you had to hold that thought?
Because they had to go to the bathroom.
And he wanted to get his 2 bits worth of it.
And now in this carefully managed file are a whole bunch of airline reservations. From Pat Garvey. Mike and I are so sorry we can't be with you tomorrow. We are all going to miss John. Our oldest granddaughter, Kate, told me about the great conversation she had with John the night we all went out for pizza. He really impressed her, but then that was John. He impressed, entertained, and helped everyone. Yeah. So thank you all. Is there anybody who'd like to final call? As John would dread.
That's right.
I have a little story, I'll tell. Hi, I'm Nancy. A couple of weeks ago, my husband and I were driving down Pepe Gazzara's, and we noticed John at the tire place. So Bill backs up. He says, John, is anything wrong? He says, no, we got a slow leak, and I thought I'd better get it fixed, it'll be flat by Monday. So John goes, and how are you doing, Bill? My husband just went through major neck surgery. So he said, I'm doing fine, and thank goodness for my wife. She was so good. He says, well, you're lucky. He says, you know, my wife's a nurse, and she would have just told me to get up and get going.
Truth at last. Does that inspire any of you?
Well, I had a little one. But you know, I usually try to be careful of my language.
Come on, Amy, come on.
I'm starting now. It's a marriage that was made early in heaven. Anne made John so happy. We all know that. He married the perfect wife to indulge his twisted sense of humor. And I don't know how many variations on this little phrases there were. You know that he loved to ride his motorcycle. And he had on this wonderful jacket which he treasured. And on the back of it, it said, if you can read this, the bitch fell off.
That should inspire. Shall we raise our class?
Yes.
Yes.
John.
To John.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. Yeah. I should just say, but only because, and so we can end on this wonderful note. We went, John and I, with Ralph and his wife, to England and rented a narrow boat, you know, on the canal in England, where the two, one going one way, one going the other, would fill up the canal. And so John's still on piecework because he, as a doctor, he made money on how much per patient. So, you know, you had to keep things moving. And so he flew the thousands of miles to get to England. And then he got on a boat that went 4 miles an hour. So Ralph and I were in charge of the locks
John
on
was
the canal.
captain.
He was the captain running the ship. He steered, and he ran the ship. So, you know, you had to wait till the water came in, and then you closed the gate, and then the boat went up, and then, you know. Anyway, so Ralph and I were very efficient at this, but then on the way to the boat, we were not quite as speedy as John would like. And so he had sort of timed things so that he would be getting away from the edge of the canal just as we got on the boat and not wasting any time. So anyway, Ralph and I have done our chore. We're going across the bridge to the boat, and John's got the engine just revving, and Ralph steps on the boat, turns around to help his sister onto the boat. But meanwhile, the boat is so I have one foot on the boat and one foot on the top, and the sewage pit in between. And as I went down, we're in this pastoral setting, you know, all these sheep, and it's really, really very nice, isn't it, Ralph? And all you could hear was, "John, you fucking asshole!"
Closing thought.
And I've got it all on video, Ann.
If John was here, he'd love it.
I thought I was going to have trouble with the crowd. You should have seen the surprised look in those sheep. So I guess this concludes the story. And I hope we all feel better.
I feel good.
Great.
Except for the bowl story. I didn't quite get it. Strange about shaving your head. But okay, it'll sink in.
You're not French, are you? I should be more... and he is a good-looking mule, Bruno. They all are.
But a lot taller than you, Brenner.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. And on Ann's behalf and the family, we really appreciate getting
He's done a good job.
to meet you and to see you and to feel how much you care. And look after my sister. She'll be here for a while.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody fill up.